This video shows maintenance and installation of a Hayward Perflex DE filter. The background audio soundtrack in this is legal and was provided by Adobe Premiere Elements 7. This is a filter unit that I used as a backup. The original filter I stripped of usable parts and threw it away. The red arrow shows the outlet to the pool. The yellow arrow shows the inlet from the pump. Here is the filter that will now be my backup. I have a new one ordered and on the way. The original filter was 28 years old. This one's about 25. This photo also shows the Hayward 3/4 horse motor that will now be my backup. I have a new one. The original motor was a 1/2 horse motor, but I went to a 3/4, and I do recommend that because your vacuum will work better and also the skimmer will work better. The red arrow goes to the main drain, the blue arrow goes to the skimmer, and the yellow arrow goes to the inlet side of the pump, suction side. The yellow arrow goes to the pool, its return line. The red arrow shows the drain. I have a drain plug installed where the blue arrow is. Here's a chlorinator that I installed. It's a good idea to let this sit on the concrete because if it's supported by the pipes, the weight of this unit could easily break it where the blue arrow is. Also, using a chlorinator will keep you from bleaching out your liner, which will happen if you put chlorine in your skimmer. Trust me, I found that out the hard way. This shows the rear of the unit, showing the drain hole at the bottom. Also, you'll see where I put a piece of rubber hose around the base of this unit to keep the noise down. The blue arrow shows the pool return line and the yellow arrow shows the air bleed valve. Before you remove the top of the filter shown here, mark an index line on the top and on the filter body so you'll have your lines in the correct place when you replace this top. To remove the top, you remove all the stainless steel bolts around the edge and you drive out the little roll pin shown by the red arrow. Tap that out real carefully. The yellow arrow is the air bleed valve and the blue arrow is the pool water return line. The two blue arrows on this base shows where the motor mounts with 2/4 inch bolts. These holes were stripped out. If you will take a piece of plastic like a wire tie and put down in that hole and run your screw back down in it, it'll hold just fine. This little trick of adding a wire tie or a piece of wire or a piece of wire solder, anything to build up a hole, you can use that in concrete, you can use it in plastic, you can use it in wood. That's a good little tip when you strip out the threads. After you remove the roll pin and remove the stainless steel bolts and lift the top off, this is what you'll see. There are two O-rings on this stainless steel shaft. Clean this shaft real good and install two new O-rings of the same size and lubricate it real good with some pure silicone grease available at Lowe's Hardware. Clean the shaft hole out in the top assembly with a piece of paper towel and a screwdriver, but be very careful not to scratch the inside of that where the seal surface is. Any scratch to that area will cause a leak. There are two plates, PCV plates, bolted together by stainless steel bolts. These plates also retain the filter tubes that are plastic tubes that are covered with fiberglass. That's what filters the water. The outer black edge here is the rubber diaphragm, which usually cracks and breaks. These two plates do have line-up arrows shown here by the blue arrow. They're really hard to see on that PVC, but they're there. You line those up to make sure you get it back in the proper position. Now we're looking at the underside of the top where the diaphragm goes. Here's the plates, the diaphragm, and the filter tubes. If your filter tubes are damaged, you may want to buy a whole unit. These are $3 a piece. And I believe there's 60 of these tubes, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't count them. But it'd probably be better to buy the whole unit, be that the case. These filter tubes are a lot more durable than you might think. My original filter, the filter tubes were still good in it, and it was 28 years old. But the diaphragm had cracked. Looking down at the inside of this, at the bottom of the filter assembly, you'll see the pump discharge tube that discharges, turns down 90 degrees, discharges water right into the bottom. These parts will only go together one way, so take your time and look at it carefully. When you remove these two snap rings, this unit will come apart. Then you can tap the threaded portion that you see here on the left, tap it right out of the filter case carefully. There's an O-ring, it seals it. If you use silicone grease on it, you'll probably be able to reuse that O-ring. This is what this would look like mounted in the filter housing, showing the turn down from the pump, the discharge, showing how it turns down to the bottom. These pieces, like I say, will only go together one way. There's a flat on the part that's threaded that slides into the other piece. The blue arrow shows where there's supposed to be a black rubber flapper valve, a one-way check valve. Mine was gone. I was getting a DE filter agent in the bottom of the pool because this check valve retains that filter agent when you cut off that pump. This is a Hayward ball valve, and O-rings are replaceable. There's one on this little shaft going to the cutoff lever that can easily be replaced, and a common source of leakage. The Hayward ball valve comes apart easily, as you see here. And here is the cutoff lever shaft showing the little O-ring. Shown here are a couple of strap wrenches that work real well on these PVC fittings. Also shown here is a Lowe's union that you can buy at Lowe's Hardware. If you have properly sealed these fittings with Teflon tape and or Teflon paste, I use both together, then you don't need to tighten it much more than hand tight. I like to wrap the fitting with Teflon tape a couple of times and then use the paste. When you use Teflon tape, you must wind it in the correct direction around the fitting. If you don't, it will tend to unwind when you screw that fitting in. Teflon paste on the left, Teflon tape in the center, and pure silicone grease on the right. You can buy all these at Lowe's Hardware. I don't know how well these parts diagrams and part numbers are going to show up when I finally enter this in YouTube. Hopefully they'll show up and be of some benefit to you. Here is a new Emerson motor, 3/4 horsepower, and the way you remove the impeller from the end of this shaft when you get it apart is take the rear cap off this motor, or any motor, and there should be a way to hold that shaft. There may be some flats or a slot to hold it while you take the impeller off. This Emerson motor is a direct replacement, no modifications necessary, and it's 115 or 230. There's a switch under the cover where you can set it to the voltage that you prefer. The small red arrow shows the data plate giving you the information on this pump, and the green arrow shows where you can put a little piece of rubber tubing over that motor support to keep some of the noise and vibration down. The black arrow is the inlet to the pump from the main drain and the skimmer. The yellow arrow shows the fitting that is the discharge from the pump into the filter assembly. To disassemble this motor and pump assembly, first remove the 4 bolts from the motor and the pump assembly. It'll slide right out of the housing that holds your strainer basket. Remove the end cap on the motor and you'll see a flat or a slot where you can hold it with a tool, and then unscrew the impeller. Turn it counterclockwise looking at it, and it should unscrew without any problem. It's good to have a strap wrench to do this in case it's on tight. The diffuser part 9 and the gasket part 8 will probably stay in the strainer housing when you pull this apart. If not, just slide it off the impeller. The impeller is part 10 and it has the seal with it, part 11. It would be a real good idea to mark these parts with a scribe line across all these before you disassemble this assembly. This seal assembly looks much like a GM air conditioning seal assembly used in your car. I sold and installed them for years. It looks just identical to me. If you're changing the motor on this, you'll want to remove the 4 bolts that hold the plastic plate to the motor, shown here as part 16. I hope these part numbers show up good for you. If not, you can find all this online. Now here's the plastic impeller assembly. If it's not available for your unit, if your unit's old, you may have to get what they call a drive train update that includes a new impeller and the diffuser and the seal assembly. The update drive kit is about $85. This is the impeller with the seal installed on it. This impeller has slight cracks at the very top, but that's fine. That's not going to hurt anything. The end of my motor shaft was real rusty, and this impeller, the threads were good on it, but just a little loose. What I did was clean the motor shaft real good, coat it with Permatex anti-seize and lubricant, or you can just use some little bit of silicone grease. Wrap it with Teflon tape. Now how much tape you use will depend on how loose that impeller is on that shaft. When you have the proper fit, just hand tighten. The rotation of this pumping the water will tighten it the proper amount. The white ceramic ring you see on the far right of this photo, that's part of your seal assembly. That presses into part 13 shown in the diagram previously. That has an O-ring around it. Lubricate the O-ring only with some silicone grease and push it into the housing. Make sure that that ceramic seal is spotless. Here's the label on this new filter assembly showing some instructions on how to use it. And here's the top of this unit. I like the fiberglass handle. Other than that, it's basically the same as the other one. And I like this new gauge. You set the green arrow on the pressure that your pump is reading right after you change the DE agent in it. Then after you have set that to your operating pressure with new agent in it, then if it ever climbs to the red arrow, that means it's time to change the filter agent. These two arrows move together. And here is the new filter installed. My other one's repaired and to be used as a backup. And this shows all the lines that are labeled on how they go. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and it doesn't take a lot of mechanical skill to do this. Anybody with any good basic skills will be able to do this with no problem. It's not that complicated. Thanks for watching.